Okay, so we would like to start.
So that's about all definition from a different perspective.
Hello. I'm going to talk today about the teleological transitions in evolution. Teleology is called adaptance. It was once a dirty word in biology, no longer the case. And what I want to try to do here is to carve the biological world at its teleological joints, so to speak, which is a different way, but not contradictory, and it doesn't sort of conflict with other ways of trying to carve the biological world, such as trying to carve important changes, such as the major transition during evolution, but rather to look at it from a slightly different perspective, and each perspective gives us a different insight. So I want to present this perspective. I will talk a little bit more about humans, since this is a session about humans, but I will not talk just about humans. Doesn't work. Okay. So, what do I mean by teleological mode of being? When I'm saying that something has a teleological mode of being, I refer to three types of ways of being in this world, biological ways of being in this world. Living a non-sentient mode of being. For example, some people may disagree with me, but I think bacteria are very much alive. They don't feel. They're not sentient. The sentient mode of being of animals that not only are alive, but actually have feelings, have needs that are felt, have drives that are felt, and so on. And what we call a rational symbolic mode of being. When I'm talking about rational, I'm not talking about engaging in syllogisms. I'm talking about a reflective, normative, symbolic way of being. And I will explain why I think that these three types of ways of being are different in important ways. All of them have evolved, and all of them, and of course you cannot have a rational being, biological being, without it being also sentient and without it being also alive. I will not talk about artifacts now, because I see artifacts as extended phenotypes of humans, robots and things like that. So as far as I'm concerned, they're extended phenotypes, so we have to talk about humans. And since this modes of being are biological, they have evolved, and we therefore call the evolutionary transitions to living, to subjective experiencing, and to symbolizing, rationalizing the teleological evolutionary transitions. And what delineates these types of transitions are distinct sets of values and goals. And I will talk about them as I go along. Right. Here we have a table which you may not be able to read very well, but it sort of gives the highlights of this talk. I want to, the person who first suggested this, of course not within an evolutionary framework, because he didn't have one, but within a kind of deep thinking about the biological world, was Aristotle. He was talking about souls. The soul for him was not the soul of the Christian, Judeo-Christian, Muslim kind of thing. It was a dynamic mode of organization that is self-sustaining and self-reproducing in very different ways. And he's talked about three types of souls. In the living, it's nutritive reproductive soul. He used both terms. It has to be nutritive in order to sustain the organism during ontogeny. It has to be reproductive in order to maintain the species over historical time. The sensitive soul, the one that is sentient, and the rational soul, which is specific to humans, but also to goats. But we're not. But he got into trouble when he started to talk about goats. With humans, it was very clear in what he wrote that this soul is totally dependent on being embodied within a body which is alive and which is sentient. Now, in addition to Aristotle's kind of classification, something rather similar, but different in an interesting way, on which again I will talk, is Dennett's classification, which uses what we can call this selectionist stance. And Dennett talks about Darwinian organisms that learn through mutation selection processes, about Skinnerian organisms that learn through reinforcement learning, about Popperian organisms that also can imagine and sort of make selection within their brain, so their hypotheses die instead of them, and about Gregorian organisms which have a symbolic kind of, which live in a symbolic kind of world, where not only do they have imagination, but they can communicate about imagination. And according to, if you sort of try to map the Dennett kind of system onto the Aristotelian system, the Darwinian organisms are the nutritive, have the nutritive reproductive soul. Some Skinnerian and all Popperian organisms have something that can be called sensitive soul. I say this not because Dennett says it, he doesn't. I say it because I have developed a very long argument with Simona Ginsburg in a very long and fat book that this is indeed the case, and that this type of mode of being is driven evolutionarily by a particular kind of open-ended associative learning, not a simple one, a rather complex one. And the Gregorian organisms led, of course, to the rational soul of Aristotle, very simple. Now, all these systems are characterized by having telos, which is in Greek, which is in English goals, and values. The goals and values are very, very closely connected. I will not go into fine kind of philosophical conceptual analysis of the differences, because they are really overlapping greatly. But we're talking about the telos of living is self-maintenance reproduction, the telos of sensitive souls, sentient beings, is to satisfy felt needs and avoid things which are aversive, which is also felt needs. And the telos of the rational soul is to satisfy sets of goals which are abstract, such as justice, beauty, freedom, things like this. This is something that organizes the goals of sensitive souls, of rational souls. And the values are, again, in the case of the living, they're phylogenetically determined through selection, of mutations and recombination, the outcomes of recombination, things like that. Only in the sensitive soul, they're satisfied by ontogenetically through affective states that tell the organism how far it is or how close it is to a desired state, usually homeostatic state, but not always. And the values of the rational soul are historically constructed, culturally constructed, they are cultural symbolic norms of different kinds. I'll not go into the values because they largely overlap. The organizing principle in the case of the living is function. Parts have functions that satisfy the goal of living and reproducing. For the sensitive soul, in addition, we have letter representations, which we call qualia, the content of which is what we call qualia, and for the rational soul, we have symbolic meta-mental representations, which are abstract values and concepts of thought. And the heredity, the kind of heredity that we have in order to see the living is an unlimited heredity, a concept developed by Ganti and much developed by Meinert and Sutton. What we have in the case of the sensitive soul organisms, in order the kind of heredity that we see is not heredity from one generation to the next, but it is within ontogeny, and it is unlimited memory, based on unlimited memory and learning. Unlimited doesn't mean that it's really unlimited in the mathematical sense, but it's huge. The potential is huge. It has a huge potential. In humans, of course, it is unlimited cultural variation. And this ties up with the kind of selection principles that are at work, open-ended natural selection during phylogeny for the living, open-ended exploration and selective stabilization, replicated and non-replicated in the brain, developmental selection during ontogeny, and open-ended cultural symbol-based selection for the rational soul. The evolutionary transitions are to living, to subjective experiencing, to symbolizing, rationalizing, and the evolutionary transition marker, the kind of capacity from which you can reverse engineer to the system that enables, to the actual system that enables it, to the living cell, to the sentient animal, to the rational animal, is in the case of living, unlimited heredity, again, Submarine Meinert Smith, unlimited associative learning for the sentient, and unlimited symbolizing for the rational. So this is what I want. So this is a framework on which I know that it's a lot to sort of take in, since it's a framework which is slightly different from the other frameworks that other people use, but nevertheless I hope that it makes some sense to you. And I want to say a few things about it, starting with Aristotle. So I will go through this this rows as I talk. Okay, so did I say that? Yes, I did. Sorry. Okay, this is from the soul. From a quotation from Aristotle. He says, on the psychic power above enumerated, some kinds of living things, as we have said, possess all, some less than all, other only one. Those we have mentioned are nutritive, the appetitive, the sensory, the locomotive. I put them together because he does, in a way, and the power of thinking. Plants have none but the first, the nutritive. While another order of living things have this, plus sensory. If any order of living things have the sensory, it must also have the appetitive. For appetitive is the genus of which desire, passion, and wish are species, and so on. Lastly, certain living things, a small minority, possesses calculation and thought, for, among mortal beings, those which possess calculation have all the other powers above mentioned. So since we're talking here to people who are biologists, I don't have to tell you that, of course, you have to live and be able to reproduce in order, so you cannot have a sensitive soul that leads you to extinction and to suicide, although this does happen, or a rational soul that does. It does happen, of course. We know that individuals commit suicide. We know that also sometimes groups commit suicide. But this is not the normal case, and if it was, we wouldn't be here. So there is a certain constraint that has to be respected. But what defines the different modes of being is not the fact that they all live and reproduce. This only defines the way of being of the living. What defines the others are the additional kinds of sets of goals and values. For the sentient, it is the satisfaction of felt needs, and for the rational, it is the striving for symbolic values. Okay. So here's the picture just depicting it, the nutritive and reproductive. For him, it was plants, because he didn't know about bacteria and other creatures like that, but he knew quite a lot about plants. He wrote a book about plants, unfortunately lost. Theophrastus, his student, wrote a lot about it, and he was very, very familiar with plants. It's the sensitive soul. I drew here an elephant, and the rational soul is the woman who is reading Japanese poetry, sitting on top and being pregnant, because she's also reproductive soul. And, and as you can see, she also feels something according to the smile on her face. So, and here is what Dennett said, and it's very interesting because there is an interesting difference between the way that Dennett thinks and Aristotle thinks, although there are huge overlaps. So Dennett says, I want to propose a framework in which we can place the various design options for brains to see where their powers come from. It is an outrageously simplified structure, but idealization is the price we should often pay for synoptic insight. I call it the tower of generating tests. As each new floor of the tower gets constructed, it empowers the organism at that level to find better and better moves and find them more efficiently. And he distinguishes between 4 levels. The first level is the reproductive. This is maybe the kind of nutritive reproductive soul that it's what he calls Darwinian organisms. This may be a very limited system. This is Dante's skeleton, right? A very, very simple protocell. But nevertheless, it has already all the ingredients that we recognize as in life as we know it, and I'm not talking about life as we don't know it, of what we call life. This is a kind of very, very simple protocell. Here is a cell, that's how it looks. You look at it. I mean, it's of course an artistic depiction, but the cell is a hugely complex being. And this is a prokaryotic cell, of course, a bacterium. And then this bacterium evolves by mutation and recombination, and there are all kinds of very clever mechanisms within. When I'm saying mutation and recombination, it's not just point mutations, and it's not just all kinds of. It can be also dedicated mechanisms for generating variations under stress, for example, like the SOS system. That's how some variations are generated, and could be also a very clever Lamarckian type of system, like the CRISPR system that we have learned about, which a large, not all, but many bacteria in archaea have possessed. Now, the second level is what Dennett called Skinnerian organisms after Skinner, and inherited behaviors leaves off, the inherited modifiability of the process of conditioning takes over. This is a quotation from Skinner, which Dennett also cites. So we have selection, but the selection is at the behavioral level and also, of course, at the neural level. There are selection processes going on in the brain. The nature of the selection processes is not something that Skinner black boxed deliberately. Now, here, the Popperian organisms are those that have imagination and that can plan the future. And we are not sure about some of the animals, as the octopus here is a Popperian. Here is an octopus hiding, using a coconut shell to move and to hide. Are the bees Popperian? Definitely. They learn by observational learning. They have obviously very, very complex forms of learning. We have heard about wasps. And there is a lot of work going on now in many labs in the world about the incredible cognitive abilities and planning abilities and imagination of creatures like insects, some insects, not all insects, but especially some of the social insects. And here are certainly Popperian organisms, the elephants, and they use tools, they do all kinds of things, they obviously plan the future in many ways, not like us, but quite surprising. And here are the Gregorian animals, those that invent art. That here is a Gregorian creature here. I mean, this guy here is reading, and the other one in the logo next door to me, very intelligent, very, very intelligent, but not Gregorian. As he doesn't have a symbolic world. Maybe he has the beginnings of a symbolic world. It's quite possible, but not very much. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this. How long do I have?
10 more.
10 more. Okay, I'll finish before time, I guess. I want to talk a little bit about the Gregorian organism, because we're talking here about language. And I want to talk about what I consider the best theory of language today in the market, which is Daniel Dor's view of conception of language. And Daniel Dor wrote a book, by the way, in 2015. You met him yesterday. He was sitting here, the guy with who looked a bit like Darwin. So he wrote a book, and the main message, his main message is that language is a technology for the instruction of imagination. Right? Think about it. When I talk to you, what I do when I tell you there's going to be lunch in the next room, it's going to be really delicious, and you're going to eat, well, I'm inventing now, some fried duck with plums and so on. You know what I'm talking, you imagine it, yes? No, not in great detail, but you do. And we take it for granted. So imagination is something on which the whole, on which language is built, but of course language is not imagination, because as I said, Popperian organisms, not Gregorian, also imagine, but it is the ability to communicate about the imagined, about the virtual, about what is not here and now. In a big way. Of course, bees can do it to some extent, and here and there you will find examples for it, but they're very limited. What is specific about humans is it's unlimited. Unlimited in the sense that it is a huge range of things about which we can, that I can instruct your imagination and you can instruct mine. Now, what he says is the communicator provides a receiver with a code, a plan, a skeletal list of basic coordination of the experience, which the receiver is then expected to use as a scaffold for experiential imagination. Following the code, the receiver raises past experience from memory and then reconstructs and recombines them to produce a novel imagined experience. And what it means is that, and it is in line, but not exactly the same, because he develops it via a very detailed linguistic analysis. But it is in line with things that Michael Tomasello has been writing and talking about. And here is a quotation: human individuals came to imagine the world in order to manipulate it in thought via objective representations, anyone's perspective, reflected influences connected by reasons, compelling to anyone, and normative self-governance, so as to coordinate with the groups anyone's normative expectation. I want to say that according to Daniel Dor, who published many papers in 2000 about this topic, what he argues is that the evolution of language started as cultural evolution in collectives, that in collectives of communicating individuals. That's how it started. First, it was very rudimentary. I will not go into the whole story of it. But then some of it was genetically accommodated. Not all of it, but some of it was obviously genetically accommodated. But it was always the collective inventions first, ontogeny second, genes last. Right? So not only are genes followers in evolution, they are followers in evolution, but culture is there. A cultural evolution here is the leader, then ontogenetic brain evolution, and then the evolution of genes. So this is how Dor sees this whole framework. Now, it's very important to note that if you're thinking about it like this, our notion of the objective world, what is objective, is a normative kind of objectivity. We agree about things that are the same or that are not the same. We call this a table, and there is a kind of linguistic agreement, normative agreement. There are linguistic norms. Our lexicon is built up for them. According to Dore, our syntax too is the product of this process. So what we call the objective, what we call an objective norm is for us, this kind of thing that we see and that we delineate in the world are based, of course, on what the world is. It's not only how we decide about it, but it has to have some kind of anchor in physical reality. But it is very much, but a very important part of it is also our decision to carve the world in particular ways which are reflected in language. Now, what is sentience? What is the mind? As you can imagine, it's something that has tried the patience and the minds of philosophers for many, many, many years from all cultures. And there are many definitions of the mind. Here is a definition which looks at it as a meta-meta representation. It says, it's a Japanese poem. What is the mind? It is the sound of the breeze that passes through the pines in the Indian ink picture, right? A representation of a representation of a representation. And to make another level of a representation, our friend Anna Zhirigovsky drew this tree. It's a calligram where the poem is written in English, which is made up of the words of the poem in English and in Hebrew. So that's another level of representation. That's one definition. I'm not saying that this definition is of course maybe applicable to the Gregorian kind of mind, not to the basic sentience of the, I don't know, crabs, bees, rat, mice even, although very clever, and probably many of them Puparian. So if I go back to this, I hope that you can understand, go back to my table. I hope that you can see why I sort of what meaning one can give to this kind of to the distinction that I made. I said something about Dennett being different from Aristotle. I didn't really explain it, so I'll say this in a few words. The way that Dennett thinks about it is whenever you have a new kind of selection process, such as, for example, with the nervous system, you have developmental selection among neurons and neuronal connections, synaptic connections. Then you define it, and you have the learning associated, which comes almost free with it. Very, very simple learning, of course. Then you can define this as a kind of one of his levels in his tower of generating test. This is how he calls the level of 4 kinds of types of selection forms. So he looks at it from the selection point of view. Aristotle looked at it from what are the sets of values and goals, the new sets of values and goals that we can assign to each. So he came up with 3 things: the living, the reproductive, nutritive soul, the one that is driven by sentience, by felt needs, and the one that is driven by symbolic ideas and stuff like this. That's why it's 3. For Dennett, it's 4, because he looked at development at selection between genes alone, selection between genes plus the selection in nervous systems, selection at a higher level within the nervous system in the Puparian organism, and symbolic cultural selection in a big way in humans. There are overlaps. I could talk about it a lot, but I will not, because I don't think it's terribly important for this talk now. And I thank you very much for your patience. And I hope that this philosophical talk was not completely out of was a little bit productive. Thank you.
there a particular point or set of conditions under which sentience emerges?
Yes, this is, well, you know, as always in evolution, what happens is that you have a huge gray area where you cannot define it very clearly. There is a point, we think, when something that we call unlimited associative learning appears. It appears probably in the mid to late Cambrian. Probably mid Cambrian.
It needs to be multicellular.
It needs to be multicellular. It needs not only to be multicellular, it needs to have a lot of conditions satisfied, not only a nervous system, not all creatures with nervous system have it. You have to have a central nervous system, and you have to have a central nervous system organized in a particular way, which we sort of talk about and spend a lot of time to try to justify. So yes, these are multicellular organisms that probably appeared about 540 million years ago, something like that. We think that we certainly see it in almost all vertebrates. There are two vertebrates about which we're not sure. Very, very primitive down the line before fish. Yeah, I mean, very, very, you know, the super primitive. And, but all fish, yes, definitely. Many arthropods and some, and the cephalopods, the occoloid cephalopod, which evolved much, much later. 310 million years later than the others. So we don't know whether the evolution of the arthropod and we believe that there was parallel evolution in arthropod and vertebrates, but we're not sure because they're big homologists, amazing homologists there. There are analogies which are very, very interesting with the cephalopods too. So the basic structures that we identified occur in all three groups.
Eva, this might be a very difficult question, but there is this unlimited associative learning. And in the same column, you saw further up in the table the qualia, right? But you did not explain how the unlimited associative learning results the qualia. It may have to be a very long explanation, but it's important.
Of course. I mean, this is the crux of the book, to say not only are we describing here an interesting evolution of learning, but this evolution of learning has consequences which have not been anticipated that are very interesting. And what we're saying is not that unlimited associative learning is consciousness. We are saying it's a marker for consciousness. So if you reverse engineer from it, you come to the kind of structures and to the kind of behaviors and to the kind of organization that you find that is described by philosophers, biologists, neurobiologists, cognitive scientists as the hallmarks of consciousness. So what we did, we followed Ganti's program. Okay, what we did is this. We looked at the definition, how people characterize sentience, state of consciousness. We worked the whole year in order to accumulate definitions, hundreds of characterizations, not definitions. Nobody is able to define it in the same way that nobody is able to define life. But characterizations. We extracted the common denominator about which most people will agree. Of course, there were always peripheral people who will not agree, but about 95% of the people who did would agree. Then we said, okay, do we have can we do a Ganti-like model? And we couldn't. So we said, but can we find a marker from which we can begin to think? So we spent another year trying to find something that we can from which we can reverse engineer the system. And after a year, we came to the conclusion that a certain type of learning, which we call unlimited associative learning, which is not the simple Pavlovian or Skinnerian kind of reinforcement learning that we know, it's a little bit more demanding, but not hugely demanding, but it is demanding, is a very good marker. Because when we reverse engineered from it, we saw that all the properties that we demand from that were on the list are satisfied. And once we identified the properties in the list and the learning mechanism that drives from which we can reverse engineer, we knew what we can look at in the brain. So we looked at the structure in the brain that can implement this kind of learning. We find them in vertebrates, in cephalopods, and in some insects. Like we didn't know really where we were going at that time, but there was a great consistency there. And then we also built a model of not of consciousness, but of unlimited associative learning, which can be the basis, maybe, of a Ganti-like model for consciousness. It's the basis, one part of it. It's like the replicative system within Ganti's system, right? We don't have the whole system. The whole system is hugely complex. I'm not saying it as an excuse, but it is. But we have some kind of start, and then once we knew we could do that, we had this, then we knew what we were looking at. We could also find the time in evolution when this thing likely evolved, and so on and so forth, and then we could follow the evolution further into the Popperian and the Gregorian organisms. This is 20 years of work. So that's a long question, answer to a complicated question.
Hello?
What did I do? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Attention is on me. Thank you for a lovely talk, and I love your Aristotelian scheme. I don't really have a question. I have something I'd like you to react to, if you would. And it's an argument by David Hume that all deliberate human thought and action is motivated and therefore affectively driven, not rationally driven. He argues rationality motivates nothing. In the famous phrase, I have no reason to prefer the pricking of my little finger to the utter destruction of everything I hold dear, and that is no rational reason. So what this suggests is that rationality is just a kind of tool of the passions. It doesn't negate your framework. It doesn't deny your framework at all, but it does downgrade reason and symbol manipulation to a kind of package of options, and invites us to think of the imaginative world that you so nicely described as one inhabited by a being with a sort of standard issue primate package of motivations.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get your reaction to this.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, I disagree with you. As you might, I understand the motivation that drove him. I think that it was very important to have a kind of anti-Cartesian empiricist-based. Sorry, what? Oh, sorry. I should look here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
okay.
fine.
So
it works.
It's very, very important to have a kind of. It was very important to have this kind of other side of the coin. I didn't talk about the anti-Cartesian side of the coin, which you did beautifully. But I don't think that. But I do think that it's not that we are rational beings. Of course, we are moved by all kinds of many unconscious motivations and so on and so forth, like all mammals. I mean, we're apes after all. Yes, but we are very, very special apes, and it is the specialness of us that I wanted to highlight. The specialness of us is that people do fight for freedom. Yes, of course they feel stuff that they don't know and don't control and things like that, but ideas do move people. Values, symbolic values do move people. They don't move chimpanzees. They wouldn't have a clue what the hell I'm talking about. In the same way that the bacteria would not have a clue about what sentience may be, right? So I think what I was highlighting here, and I was not talking about the affective side, you cannot have learning without having a reinforcement system, a value system of some kind, and of course, in sentient animals, there are complex emotions, and these emotions drive the individual, and they continue to drive the individual even when it makes decisions about symbolic values. But symbolic values exist in the human world, and they are special to it. They make, and our symbolic system, including language, makes the possibility of cultural evolution enormously different from the cultural evolution that does exist in other animals. In fact, I wrote a book about cultural evolution in non-human animals. So I appreciate it, but I also know its limits. It's a very, very different story. We are very, very different kind of being. I'm sorry. We are not we're not like chimpanzees or crocodiles, even in the affective sense. Our emotions have been changed by culture. For example, we developed the blush, shame, guilt, embarrassment, pride, are emotions that we have the beginnings of it in other animals, but in us they are very strong. We have moral emotions. We have intellectual emotions. We respond. Our emotions have been also shaped by language. We have a far greater control of emotions, specifically because our imagination can lead us to overreact to things. So we have to control and to distinguish between what we imagine as a result of somebody else telling us about it and what we imagine and what we see, or what we imagine because of our own experience. This kind of distinctions are very, very important, and the control of emotions in humans, we think, has been a very important part of the evolution of Homo sapiens sapiens. Again,
Thank you.
It's again a very long answer. It's a very complicated, because you asked a complicated question. And the emotional aspect of human evolution is very, very interesting and in many ways unique to humans.
Sort of continuing this line, I wonder what you think of the limits or potential of artificial intelligence that maybe a non-living, non-sentient rationale.
Yes, they are extended phenotypes, as far as I'm concerned. As I said, like the telephone, we all rely on the telephone. If our telephone gets lost, we panic. And I imagine that in the future, when we will have very much more intimate relationships from childhood with all kinds of artifacts that we will live with, maybe we'll have things in the brain to communicate with artifacts and things like that. I mean, it will be, our cognition will increase. This doesn't mean that the artifacts are sentient. They are part of our rational self at the moment, and they depend on our sentience. It could be the case that at one point, sentient artifacts will be created. When this happens, and this is not going to be easy, because I think that the constraints, or that the affordances of biological materials are not appreciated by most roboticists. When this happens, we shall have to redefine life, by the way. It will be it will lead to a redefinition of a lot of things, including the very basic notion of life, which is today based on biology as we know it. We're not there yet, but it is something that we should think about. Again, we just hinted at it at the end of our book when we started speculating very completely irresponsibly.
I want to invite you not only to eat, but to take with you, if you have a water bottle. It's not going to be strenuous, so you can walk with your sandals, but at 1:30, there will be a bus waiting here to take us, and we shall go to a museum, given the theme of this day, a prehistoric museum and a prehistoric site. I think it's the largest one in the Middle East, and it will be a nice drive. So take with you water.
But can we take water from them? Because how can we take water? Most people don't have water bottles.
So there will be water on the bus.
There's a water bottle in each room.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And if you want maybe a hat or whatever. Okay? Thank you.
1:30 we leave. Okay, so make sure we be there before.
Anna, can you give a go for 5 so we can join the club?
Yes.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. That went very, very smoothly.
Sure, my pleasure. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Until tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.